about we start off by giving a quick introduction? I was the chairman, so you guys already know me. Please take it away, Anders.
Yes, my name is Arpteg. An AI nerd, I guess, similar to yourself. I've been doing this for 20 plus years, and in academia and private sector. I see some old friends here from Peltarian times and Spotify times as well. But these days I'm working as the director of data science at the Swedish Security Service, trying to help to find value, as the theme of this conference is, for the good of our society and democracy.
Yes, and you also have a fantastic podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Right.
You should really listen to it. I listen to it all the time. Is it AI After Work?
AI After Work podcast, yes. Thank you very much for that plug.
You're welcome. You deserve it. Hi, everyone. My name is Salla. I used to work at SEB. I was the chief data scientist there for 4 years. Last time I was here, I was at IKEA, working with web and app from a data analytics perspective, trying to improve on recommendations and things like that. And now since 2.5 months, I'm at a company called Navigare Ventures, where we do investment in early research innovation. So my main focus area is, of course, applied mathematics, because I'm a mathematician by training. I'm getting nerdy about quantum computing, but not there yet. Yes, we should. And then cybersecurity, of course, because that's...
Man, I wish that was one of the questions on this list here. We'll see if we have time for something like that. Daniel?
Yeah, Daniel Tidström. Also been around for quite some time in these conferences. Spent my years in both as a practitioner and also as a leader in data science analytics. So also have quite a lot of current and former colleagues and clients here as well. Currently working as a partner and consultant at DataEdge. We're focusing on value creation from data analytics and ML. So yeah.
Excellent. I think we have about 1 minute before we go live. How much is it with 1 minute? Quantum computers, do they actually speed things up? I haven't seen any evidence of it yet. What do you say? What's the consensus?
They will.
They will?
Not yet.
If we put more money into it.
Yeah. So they might.
You're also interested in quantum computers,
yes,
I know.
I am. But I still love to see the day that actually do provide value over a classical computer. But I'm hoping it will at some point, but... probably some time to go before that happens.
Yeah. Well, we're seeing significant investment there, and everybody's hoping that there's going to be a crossover with AI and lots of other industrial applications. So,
I actually wrote a quantum computer program back in 2014.
Nice.
Okay.
In an old
for fun or
for experimentation, a D-Wave system actually.
Oh, right.
At that time, so yeah, good old times.
Yeah, I know you can download some. I know at least Microsoft has a little toolkit where you can run quantum simulations, and it's really slow to run on your computer, basically.
Yes. I mean, it's still mainly a mix between both having a classical computer, feeding into a quantum computer, and trying to make the two mix in a good way.
Yeah.
But still, the simulator actually is faster than the quantum computer still.
Yeah. That's funny. I give talks on a regular basis about how to get started with generative AI, and one of the tips I give to people for sourcing talent is to find people, one, that have led successful projects in the past, i.e. not people that have just been around. And the people here in this audience, or in this panel, are esteemed not only because they're very technically savvy, but have done a lot of neat projects. But I think one thing that is like a pro tip for me is often that people have hobby projects. And I thought it was cool that you just mentioned that that was just something you tried out. Do you guys have the chance now that in your busy careers to still experiment and do that kind of stuff?
Yes, I think that's one of the major selling points for the current job that I have. That I
gave you that opportunity.
Yeah, I can spend days just reading about really random stuff, and then suddenly it's really relevant. And I think in general, that's a great way to live a life, just being driven by curiosity and daring to sit and do calculations. I spent summer reading a theoretical minimum book on classical mechanics, and now I'm delving into quantum mechanics just to kind of remember everything that I should remember.
That's nice.
It's
Books
really
still
good
have their value, it seems.
Yes.
Well, we're live now, so we're going to hit it off. Let's do a 2-sentence introduction this time for the people that are with us online. Anders, number one.
My name is Anders Arpteg. I'm the director of data science at the Swedish Security Service, trying to find value for data and AI in our Swedish society and democracy.
Awesome.
Very well done. My name is Salla Franzen. I'm an investment manager at Navigare Ventures. We invest in early research innovation, and I'm focusing on applied AI, I guess, research innovation around applied mathematics, quantum computing, and cybersecurity.
Daniel Tidström, partner at DataEdge. We do value creation from data and AI and ML.
Awesome. We got a number of questions from the audience and people that sent in questions, and some of them really stuck out, and the panelists are excited about answering. I'm going to start off with one of the first questions where the chairman excellently pointed out the speed of advancement in AI just a moment ago. 500 papers a week. It's hard to keep up. What are your reflections on the advancements in the past year and as they are and where they're headed?
Yeah, I think you can calculate the speed in different ways. One is the research arena, where I would say, of course, it's fast, but it's not as fast as in the engineering arena, I would say. What we have seen in the last year, or at least half a year, in terms of building products that make use of generative AI, has been incredibly fast. You know, how Microsoft has done it, how Google has done it, how Meta has done it, how Adobe has done it, in a very, a few number of months. Is something we've never seen before.
It's not 2-3 years.
Yeah.
We're talking about half a year.
Yeah. It's very unique and very exciting. Truly finding value, right?
Absolutely. What are your thoughts?
I completely agree. I think it's fantastic that we have such a big community of practitioners that are thinking about trying to solve real problems and creating real value for the world. But I was at this EVA, Research to Business, an EVA event, so it's the Royal Engineering Academy, where there was a great panel, and this professor who works with the power grid, and she got the question, is AI moving fast? And she was like, well, no. And I thought that was so fantastic. And that's sort of, I think a lot of maybe people in this room feel that you have like all these fantastic things that are coming out. And then in 3 years' time, someone's like, okay, here's a little bit of budget. And you're like, oh, thank you so much. But I think it's that. It's sort of, it's a challenge to be pedagogical about all the fantastic things that are happening. Are they actually relevant for us as a company? Should we be investing time into it? And can we please allow a lot of people to have fun and play around with these things?
Is that a reflection of the pace of advancement in various areas of society, or is it the advancements of knowledge and application of these technologies that's different?
I think it's a bit of both. I mean, because at the end, it needs to be humans that use the things that we're building. And I really like the example that you had in your keynote, the fantastic chairman, where you were talking about this solution that you had, but then it wasn't something that people really bought into. And that is it's such a key thing to solve, like really understanding what is the actual problem. And quite often people start with, yeah, we need to do AI. We don't know what it is, but let's do it. And then when you start talking to them, they might actually just need a dashboard as a first step. And sometimes it's beneficial to allow it to take that time.
What are your thoughts on the rapid advancement in the past year?
No, but I think, looking from a 30,000 meter perspective and looking at graphs, like it makes sense from a theoretical perspective. But I think what has totally blown me away is the sort of general practicality of tools like GPT and ChatGPT, and how it really has sort of established itself as a market tool that you can actually do practical things with. And that was mind-blowing to me. I wasn't expecting that. I was reflecting on, like, when we had this panel a year ago, that was like pre-ChatGPT, and that seems like a different era in some ways. And I guess from a research perspective, I guess we could have seen this coming, but I was still surprised.
Well, we sort of started getting into the haves and the have-nots, let's say. There's a dichotomy here that's being discussed, whether open source is the future, only big companies are going to have this tech, little companies are going to have a hard time implementing it. What are your reflections on that? And let me just preface with that many of the cool technologies that I'm pretty excited about because I get to play with them, such as rope scaling and these kinds of things that you can use with LLMs, are all done by hackers and open source enthusiasts. We work with what we have. We don't have the giant GPU data centers to work with. What do you think of that sort of dynamic?
Yeah, I think it's been exaggerations on both sides of this discussion, both in those that believe that you can find value in open source in a very easy way. I mean, it is amazing how a lot of open source models has come about in recent times, and you can really make use of them quickly. But I'm also a bit afraid about the idea that some companies have, or some people have, that you can simply take an open source repository, code, model, and simply put it in production, and everything will work. And that's not normally the case. It's much harder than people think to take a research level like a repo and put that in production. So yes, it is available, and that's great. But it's harder than people think to actually find true value and integrate that into your system. And also the discussion that we've seen in the last year about, is there a moat between the big Google, Facebook, Amazon, Microsofts of the world or not? Some people says it is not, and open source will catch up all the time, but I think there is a big moat. And it's a big moat because, for one, the big tech giants have, of course, the competence, the talents. They have the infrastructure in place. They have the data in a way that no one else have.
The data really seems to be one of the key points here.
But one additional point is actually the users. If they make a change on the product, they can quickly release that and find value for a huge number of users throughout the world in a way that no other company can.
Or in the case of Bing, for example, the ability to augment the chat with their search capabilities that they already have.
Yes.
That's something that, you know, a hacker like myself could never.
Yes. So there is a moat, but I'm glad to see there is still a lot of progress in open source. But it's harder than people think.
Yeah, I think this is exacerbated a little bit by many Medium articles where they show how easy it is to get started with an LLM. And you think, okay, well, look, here's even a ready notebook. Toss it into production. But to scale that and to actually make use of it is a different matter. What is the sentiment where you work with the difficulty or non-difficulty of piggybacking on what open source has made available to us versus, you know, the reality of things?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I mean, I think open source is fantastic. I'm a massive fan of it. I love that practitioners can talk to each other quite openly about what they're actually doing. So I have a background in financial services, and it was actually one of my first jobs, and I came almost directly from research. And I was so used to, you know, publishing everything I did and just trying to make some noise. I think probably 3 people read my thesis, so yay. But I really love the idea of being able to co-create things. And I think what was quite fun was, I think 5 years ago, maybe we started a research arena, Wallenberg research arena around media and language, because we saw the need to actually sort of try to co-create something in the Nordics, because we have quite similar cultures, we have quite similar values, and so trying to really build something that would be for the benefit of Swedish society and not for the benefit of a specific company. And I would never expect sort of an American culture company to even think about that. Having worked a lot with Americans, it's money talks. It's just how much can we make from this? What's the benefit for me?
I think interviews with like Jeffrey Hinton and others have said that the reason we don't have AGI right now is because it's not obvious how to monetize a dumb human-like, program.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's kind of the beauty of the Nordics. I think sometimes we do things just because it's good for society. Yeah.
What about where you work? Do you experience customers asking for? Do they have FOMO, fear of missing out of all these rapid advancements, and are looking to sort of put them into production now, or are they stressed about that? What is the sentiment from the consumer side, so to speak?
No, but I think it has for sure been a shift in awareness of AI, and we see much more discussions going on at like very senior executive level that have been more difficult before. So I think definitely there is an awareness, a sense of urgency, and there are a lot of sort of experimentations starting to happen. So I think that is good, but also, I mean, looking at the Gartner hype cycle, it's generative AI is right at the top. So I think also we need to, as practitioners, take care to also work with actual problems, because it's. I think you and me spoke about that, Anders, after a podcast recording. Like, we are very hype driven in our industry, and that's a good thing because it pulls investment, but also there are a lot of potential broken promises on the other side of the fence as well. So I think really finding real problems to solve is important.
You mentioned ChatGPT, which is such an accessible tool in the sense that compared to graph neural networks or something, which conceptually can be hard to grasp for a CEO in a very analog domain, everybody gets ChatGPT. But the question is, do you have the sense that the CTOs that understand that this is happening and that it's going to be transformative, are they able to actually convert that into, I see ways in which we could use this?
To me, I think it's a learning process, and it's for me as well. I mean, I haven't figured out exactly what I can use GPT for. I'm finding new use cases every week, basically.
Well, I mean, but that's the point. You find use cases every week. Are the CEOs, do they have that creativity, or does it fall on them, or does it fall on the data scientists, so to speak?
I think you touched on that before. My thinking is that we need to converge and not have one big problem that I see is the divide between having a strong domain expertise, not necessarily understanding the capabilities of AI, and having the AI expertise, but of course not having deep business knowledge in all the domains of the company, because it can simply not be done from a centralized team. So working together to bridge those gaps and training companies in, not building an LLM or any kind of machine learning tool, but looking at, okay, this is a pattern that we can use to solve certain things. I think that is really important. And I think that is one of the major hurdles for a lot of organizations, that the different skill sets are not co-located and aligned.
I'm actually a bit annoyed with the success and easy to understand way of ChatGPT. I think you know where I'm going with this, but everyone, exactly as you said, understands how you make use of ChatGPT or these kind of large language models, and many often times, in a wrong way. And what they don't understand is that it's actually a complement to other AI techniques that's out there. So they think, why don't you simply apply an LLM to X, Y, and Z problem? And don't understand it's not a solution for everything.
Yeah.
And it is a complement. The good thing with large language models is it adds new use cases we've never seen before, but it doesn't really replace old ones. Some of them, yes, but most of them, no. And that is really hard to communicate, and you almost get fired if you don't, use an LLM for something.
Yeah.
And just to pile on to that, no, but I think for me, I'm a bit disappointed. No, because I think, so when I started doing data science, whatever that means, maybe 8 years ago or something, there was a lot of people that fell in love with a model, and then they were looking for problems to solve with their model. And that was super fun because everybody wanted to do deep learning, and then you tried to find a place to put deep learning, and then nobody wanted it, and nobody understood it, and didn't go into production. Everybody was disappointed. So then we started to really shift the narrative and look for problems instead. So at SEB, what we did was that we looked at the business plan for a team, and they did their business planning as usual, and then we had a small add-on. So do you need any kind of data to solve your problems? Probably. And is there anything that we could do with machine learning to sort of either accelerate your journey or to improve it further? And that was a really good way of doing it, because from the start, you have the business people with you. They know that this is important. They understand what the benefit is because it's their business plan. They own the journey. And now with ChatGPT, there's this massive risk that the management starts to but we can do this and that and this. And then you're just throwing away the priorities. You're throwing away the things that are almost done to do this kind of hype thing, which isn't necessarily what adds the most value in your company.
Let me counter, or not counter, but offer a counterpoint, and I want to hear your reflections. And I'll just preface it with one thing. This past week, the Fuyu model came out, which is a multimodal language model with a very simple architecture that can do both images and text, and is just phenomenal in how good it is for how small it is. And they gave it for free because out of the kindness of their hearts. But so 2 questions. One is the moat, is stuff leaking out through open source? And 2, when it comes to the creativity required to find those applications. Well, I'll have to get back to it because I lost my train of thought.
I think I know what you mean. So.
Yeah. Go ahead.
If I take the first one first and the moat, I mean, I think it's awesome that it is getting out in open source because it requires people that use it to use it in normal, practical environments that don't have thousands, tens of thousands of GPUs to run it on and have millions and billions of dollars to fund the infrastructure. That is a really awesome research direction to actually put practical use of AI. So in that terms, it's great. But otherwise, I think you were alluding to was, if we put something in open source domain, you will find use cases you never thought you would find otherwise. So if you just have the tech giants having the big, foundational models in place and no one else can really change them or development or do their own thing with it, you wouldn't find, the thousands of other use cases you would find if you put something out there. And I think that's truly amazing and one of the truly good things with open source. But there is still a moat.
Yeah. Yes, I definitely agree. And that ties it together. I remember my question, which is, so you're saying all these use cases that you never knew were possible. My counter question is, I have always personally found it easier to say, or preferred to say, no, that's not possible, rather than try and educate them on exactly what's possible so that they can send me requirements, because often those requirements are wrong. Should we just tell people to dream what they want, and then us as engineers say that's going to cost you this much, or it's this difficult, or it's not possible? Which direction is the correct direction?
I like the idea of starting with sort of dreaming, because if you go to business experts, to the right kind of business expert who actually wants change, and you allow them to kind of have a guided session where you take them on a journey about what could be possible, but starting with their reality, starting with their customers, starting with the value that they're looking for, then it can be a really pleasant journey. And along that way, you also gain a lot of trust, because if you're open and you're listening and you're really trying to understand what the problem really is, when you start suggesting ways to solve it, they have seen that you listen. They've understood that you've thought a lot about it, and then when you come with a suggested solution, even if you have to pivot along the way, which is quite normal, you'll still be able to keep that trust. And then it becomes a really good relationship, because you probably need to work together for quite some time. It's not just this one small project. It's hopefully like a longer term commitment that you can have.
That totally makes sense. And it actually ties very well to question number 4. And I'll follow up with what you just said here. Question number 4 is generative AI strategy versus traditional data science and ML strategy. And I want to ask you also, as a continuation here, sort of, how much time do you spend being creative with the customer versus the customer coming to you and saying, or knowing exactly what they want, or worse, knowing exactly how you should do it?
I guess it depends. I mean, sometimes they have a pretty clear idea, and it depends also where you're working. But we are doing much more sort of co-creation now. We're working with the senior executive team of a large industrial company in Europe, and really trying to start also with educating them that not only what ChatGPT is, because everyone knows that, but to Anders' point as well, that there are other tools in the toolbox, and how can you apply that to problems. So trying to do co-creation and build up to something that has a reasonable chance of succeeding it, but actually solving a real problem.
Is there a difference then between the way you would strategize when it comes to these new series of tools, whether it's LLMs or text-to-speech, speech-to-text, image synthesis, and all those cool things? The way you plan your strategy is a difference from the way a data science team would plan the strategy for the year?
To me, I think that, there are aspects of it that will potentially add layers that you need to add to your strategy. But if you have a sound, good AI strategy, or like whatever you call it, ML strategy, data science, data strategy, if you have that in place and it's aligning to your company's and organization's objectives, and you're working in a good way, I don't see why it should be vastly different. But of course, it might add layers like ethical concerns. It might include, I don't know. Redundancies, for example. Will certain functions be replaced in some way, or it will be augmented? I think quality, of course, because GPT has has a tendency to hallucinate once in a while. So do you probably still need humans in the loop, and how do you take care of that? So I think there are a layer of things that you might need to consider on top of what you have, but I don't see it that it should be vastly different entity.
I do get a sense that it's a little bit different. If I play the devil's advocate here, a lot of conversations before were about, oh, we need to do data cleaning first, or we need to make this projection model, or we need like very tech focused. Whereas now, because this stuff is so, nobody really asks. I mean, I think people muse on LinkedIn about how language models work, but you know, business people get the gist of it, and then sort of hop directly to how do we use it without worrying too much about the technical stuff. Is that reflected in the way you strategize about how to make use of these tools? Does it change the strategy?
You want us to reduce data quality? Is that what you're saying? I'm not going to.
I just think everybody here has cleaned their data. They've been doing it for 5 years. It should be done now, right?
Of course, some aspects of how you produce the data for these kind of models is different. But I still actually think the core strategy from a data science point of view is very similar between generative AI and normal use cases.
You're talking about the process, like a scientific process, or what are you talking about?
Or business process, rather.
Okay.
The core idea is still to find the value in the business. That hasn't changed. And that is really what should prioritize your work that you do, if it is generative AI or not.
But okay, so like a head of AI, is that person a business developer, or are they a technical lead for the center of excellence?
I think it's similar. If you take a product owner kind of role, I think it's similar in that case. They, of course, need to understand the needs of the customer, but they also need to understand the products they're building. And the same, I would say, apply to a head of AI kind of role. So, of course, you need to understand the possibilities and the needs of the organization and the customers we have. In our case, it's kind of a luxury because our customers are in-house. We are building solutions for our counterterrorism groups and counter-espionage groups, and we have actually access to our customers in-house, compared to like Spotify or someone else that have the customers outside and can't really speak to them and have the same kind of close collaboration as we can. So we have got that kind of luxury of actually being able to integrate with them very closely. So in that sense, it's a good thing, and we can speak closely about them, what the proper value should be. So I would say, in short, it is very similar. It is still about, what are the real values. I think, one positive thing with Gen AI is really that it opened up the interest in the non-technical people, and they can imagine, at least in their heads, what you can do with AI. And then the real technical solution, whatever model should be used or how you produce the data, that's still left to the tech people. But at least the imagination has significantly improved now, thanks to generative AI.
Well, I don't want to kick a dead horse here, because we've discussed for many years things like centralized versus decentralized and all that kind of stuff. However, there are some roles that are emerging and being used, such as AI product owner and that kind of stuff. Are those legitimate roles? Are they part of the AI organization, or are they business users?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, in general, there's maybe 2 or 3 titles each year that appear that didn't exist before. And my favorite hate one is data steward. Now everybody knows that, because it sounds like you're some sort of we actually had a chef apply for that job, because he was like, well, I could be a steward. It's like, oh God, can we change that name?
Data.
Yeah. It's like you're this incredibly senior data detective, and you get the name of like some sort of a server. Yes, that was a side note. No, but in general, I don't really think of it as roles for a specific title. I think of it as like there needs to be someone who thinks about this, So there needs to be someone who thinks about data quality. There needs to be someone, and then you can kind of use that to see whether your sort of ecosystem of individuals working around creating value with AI and generative AI, whether you have the right skills there. And I think the head of AI should at least like the industry that they're working in. And then it's good if you can understand enough at least to introduce your team to people that know more than you do, because usually that's where they can learn the most.
So is this something that's going to... Yeah, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to add, I think, I don't like the term product owner, but I like the term product manager. And I think that is a super critical role or mindset.
Do you say AI product manager or just product manager?
you can call it whatever, ML, AI, data. But I mean, the fact of, and I think also looking at why ChatGPT managed to get the market is because it's an understandable product and an interface that people can actually understand the value of and use. And I think that is what we're losing out on of many times. And I think like the way we try to look at that is very much with the product mindset. I mean, having an idea of going to, okay, problem solution fit, that is one thing. And then you have like some kind of product market fit that actually makes it valuable. And working as a product team on these things, I think is a very healthy way of going about it. And then what you call the role, to Salla's point, it's not that important.
Yeah. And I think there's one role that I have learned to love that I wasn't aware of before. And I think I spoke about it in the panel last year, if anybody remembers that. But design. Really thinking about the end user, the applicability, the ease of use, the reducing the context switching, really making it something that's graspable and tangible and fun. And there, I think ChatGPT did a great job.
Yeah, let's focus on this one for a second because, data scientists always focus on the loss metric. Like some metric to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do. But there's almost always a metric beyond that, which is the purpose of the tool itself. So, you could say that the language model in ChatGPT is performing admirably, but the purpose is to delight the users. And then you need a product owner that measures that, sees if you're doing a good job and all that kind of stuff. Is it clear sort of how the division of responsibility of those two things should be when it comes to the data science experts versus the business people? Where should that be divided? Is joint responsibility? What do you think?
Well, it should probably be divided because data scientists are often horrible in trying to understand users. So
yes, okay, agreed.
And I'm a data scientist myself, so I don't, I can say that with pride. But still, I think, if we have people that can truly understand the value of the users and the business, of course, they need to be able to measure the proper KPIs so that we can know what value it does provide. If someone were to say that the loss value of a model is the best KPI for a product, I would not trust that person.
But I think a point to that and a good recommendation is, we have tried to apply a lot of thinking from like Silicon Valley Product Group and Marty Kagan on that because they have a very good, in my opinion, at least risk framework where you have like the business value risk that you need to manage. You have the usability risk that is like, will users figure out how to work with this product? And then you have the feasibility risk that is like, can we build it? And then also business viability that is like, can we do this from an ethical standpoint? Are we allowed to because of regulatory frameworks? And I think that's a very good way to apply to your product thinking, and because then feasibility risk is naturally managed by the engineers and the data scientists and people, but usability needs to be done in close cooperation with the business.
I think regulations, the European AI Act, and other things are something we should definitely discuss, and I want to put a pin in it because I want to hear your specific feedbacks on your experiences. I know in some work that I've done, people have already started preparing for it in anticipation, but there's one question that the audience really wants to know and wants to hear from you guys, which are future predictions. So I want to make sure we have enough time to go through future predictions. Everybody wants to know what's coming in the coming year and how can we use it. Well, forget about how we can use it because people will figure that out, and I think it's cool. So we'll figure out that part later. What is coming in the next 6 months, and what's coming in the next 2 years?
You want me to start?
Go.
Okay, I have to think about this. One thing, we had Piotr here before from DeepMind, and his supervisor was Jan LeCun, so kudos to him. Jan LeCun is certainly one of my heroes, and I think his ideas about the future is something I concur with a lot. So his view of autoaggressive LLMs is not promising, and I agree. I don't think that's the proper way to build more intelligent and more practically usable models. So I think that will be a change that we're seeing, not in 6 months, but in coming 2 years, yes. So that will be models that can actually do reasoning in a more efficient way. is similar to this kind of JEPA paper that Jan LeCun had put out for like a year ago, where you have a different structure that is not just predicting the next word. And I think that can enable much smaller models, much more high-level reasoning capabilities into models, and a way that we also include like the world state, which is really not possible to have in today's large language models. So this kind of modular approach that they speak about in a JEPA architecture, that kind of step is, or direction is what I think we will see in coming years. And that I think is a really good future that will enable us to come to much more usable, valuable, and also more practical models.
I'm going to push back on one thing, and I also want to hear what you have to say about the coming 6 months, because even 6 months is difficult to predict, right?
Yes.
But I feel like there's something to be said about the elegance of simple models and sort of, how everything here has come from very simple principles. We see some transformer architectures that have recurrent components and very... Yeah, well, Fuyu, for example, uses linear embeddings for the images instead of having separate components. Do you think they'll be more simple or more complex?
I mean, I certainly agree that the transformer and the autoaggressive LLMs with a super simple and beautiful objective is very beautiful and is really impressive. And how that can, it can be some kind of emergence of intelligence coming up from that is truly amazing. So from a scientist's point of view, it's of course super beautiful and interesting. I think still, though, it's similar to a single hidden layer neural network. In theory, according to the universal approximation theorem, that should be able to do anything, including any kind of large language model or even the human brain. But it doesn't work. And it doesn't work because of practical reasons. And I think the same reason can be applied to large language models. Autoregressive is super beautiful and simple, but it's not practical enough. Okay. And
yeah, so I'll agree on that one. Let's go to the 6 month prediction.
I'm actually more interested in the outcome on some of the legal cases going on right now. I think that will really shape the future, and we will see that in coming 6 months. Everyone is getting sued now, OpenAI, Google, and so forth, and Midjourney and many more. And the outcome of these cases is something I'm really looking forward to, independently of the outcome. But I think that will truly shape the future in coming 6 months, and that will be an interesting future.
Do you think the decisions will be decisive so that it will actually head us on a trajectory, or will it just be, a bump in the road? We shouldn't delve too deep because we're going to get back to the regulations in a second. But I mean,
I think more bump
will
in the
we
road,
see some? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So it won't be like in 6 months we'll know. It'll be more like, okay, we're getting a sense of the sentiment of
We will find new ways to protect the data and the IP that data has that will still work with training foundational models. But it will be some bumps on the road to do that. And we can't do it in a Wild West kind of way as we have done it so far.
All right, Salla, what's up next?
Yeah, regulation. But I'm also following the lawsuits with great interest. And I mean, yes, 6 months is a very short time and long in AI in many senses. But I'm kind of hoping that there's going to be some fun applications of ChatGPT that come out where, I don't know, maybe a physical robot or something. That would be fun. But then I completely share your sentiment, and maybe it's because we've known each other for a couple of years, but I'm a mathematician by training, and if you study 10 years of math, you have time to build up a lot of your understanding based on Hilbert's axioms of what is a point, what is a line, and then you build up math theory from there. And for me, I'm such a fan of elegant solutions, and it breaks my little mathematician heart when you solve problems using models that aren't fit for purpose or that are just massively over. It's like my supervisor used to tell me that I was shooting doves with cannons, which meant that I was doing something really unelegant. So I'm kind of looking forward to seeing, the much more specific knowledge-based solutions that people can come up with when you really think about a problem. So, I mean, there's a group at MIT, for instance, that's building a large language model for physics, and it's physicists that are building it. So adding all the knowledge in their specific specific field and then waiting and really patiently doing that properly. And then let's see what comes out of there. But it could be something really interesting.
Let me ask you, it feels to me that sort of picks up on these words that we're really being pushed into areas of philosophy that many people aren't always familiar with. And so take in the mathematics, for instance, you have people like Gary Marcus and others that believe in compositionality and that language is compositional, and Chomsky and Saul Kripke, if you go backwards to the philosophers that didn't have the computers of today. And then people that believe that language is reference. And you have this whole domain of philosophy where you can contextualize it philosophically. Everything from ethics to what it means to compute things one way or another. Is that something that is going to enter the public discourse and that we have to take into account? Or is it simply going to be amusing and a pastime of people in the coming years?
Well, I think in general, I mean, even the large language models, in the same way as the internet, it's going to have an impact on our culture if it becomes very widely used, because the way that it expresses itself. So I have a friend who's British, and she can't use ChatGPT because it's just American English, and she gets so like it hurts her fancy little posh English heart. But it does change the way that you speak, and that was one of the reasons why we wanted to start the research arena, because we wanted to be sure that we can actually sort of infuse the language models with our culture as well. So I do think that we're sort of, and I'm not sure that every citizen needs to be involved in the discussion, but I do sort of...
Let me give you an example, and I want to hear your thoughts on this. Consider what it means for something to be true. Did Christopher Columbus discover America? And you can have a discussion on semantics of what it means to discover and that kind of stuff. Everybody's talking about LLMs making stuff up. They're saying something that's not true. Do we have to have discussions about what it means for something to be true? Mathematicians have had their versions of those discussions. Philosophers have their versions. Is this something we're going to discuss, or are we just going to sort of get it in by osmosis and sort of move on with life?
I think that's a good question. I'm just top of mind. I interviewed Dr. Manuela Veloso, who is the head of AI research at JP Morgan and was at Stanford or MIT or one of those really big universities. And we were asking her, like, so what is your feeling about large language models? Like, when they hallucinate, is that a problem? And she was like, no, just ask the same question several times with different wording, and then you'll see if it knows. And I was like, oh, that's so practical. But also a bit sort of surprising, because I wouldn't expect a like everyday citizen to understand that you need to ask the same question several times to really validate whether, it's kind of...
Children seem to have a very good intuition for how to use these tools.
Yeah.
Let's do the 6 months. What do you think is going to happen within 6 months?
I'm hoping to see some really fun applications of large language models. That sort
like user-centric tools?
No, more like weird ways of creating proteins or thinking of new molecules. I think that would be incredibly fun.
In the coming 6 months?
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, okay, cool. What do you think,
Might be wrong,
Daniel?
but still.
I was starting with the long-term.
The long-term.
Perspective.
Where are we heading?
Super difficult. I think I'll skip out on the technical and algorithmical side. I'm not up to date there. But I think in general, I mean, if it holds true, I think that it will be much more integrated. I think one problem now is that you can get a lot of good input from ChatGPT, for example, but then you have to sort of do it yourself, like integrating it to become a truly personal assistant, like being able to schedule, I don't know, haircut appointments.
This is what we wanted Alexa and stuff to do for us to begin with.
Yeah,
right?
but yeah, exactly. But some way of integrating and making it sort of act on your behalf to some extent. That would be super cool and super handy. I'm lazy and I forget things, so it would be great to have someone that can sort of do things like that. Whether that's a prediction, I have no idea. But it's.
Are you afraid that people will lose their humanity?
No, I'm not.
I think that follows.
No, but I'm not afraid of that to the slightest. To be honest, I'm more concerned in what will happen if we reach AGI to your prediction, or like superhuman intelligence like closely thereafter, probably. like, what will we do with society? I think the pace of technology will most certainly outpace our human and legislational change pace. And I think that is a huge problem that we probably will have to figure out somewhere down the line.
We're really circling back on the legislation stuff right now. So let's end it with the 6-month prediction in business. What are we going to see?
A lot of prototypes being developed, some working, some not. But I think also what I see now and what will happen is probably also we're still sort of chasing what happened like a couple of years ago with like GDPR and being able to scale things, work effectively, moving to cloud, treating data in a good way. I think those are still things that will be the majority of workload for most companies.
You gave me nightmares when you said moving to the cloud. Like that's something that, but that is something that's still happening in some places. And we're chasing GDPR. I think that's a perfect segue into this. I can't say that I noticed GDPR as much of a speed bump as much as people very quickly adjusted. We saw some sort of jurisprudence on it, on some people that got in trouble. But in general, people seem to have managed it. And I know a lot of people complain that GDPR is, inconvenient, but, it's around and we're living with it and things seem to have moved on. What do you guys think the effect of things like the AI Act and also the cases that we're seeing in the US and other places form right now? What effect will they have? Are they serious concerns to the further development of AI?
Well, I'm glad to see that we have a lot of regulation when it comes to AI coming about all over the world, not only in Europe, but actually in the US and in China, not least as well. So all of them are recognizing the need, and we do have a need for proper regulation and make sure that we maximize the positive use of AI and minimize the bad use of AI. That said, there are risks with defining regulation as something that regulates techniques instead of use cases. And I hope that people follow that idea of minimizing, regulating a specific technique and really thinking about the potential use cases. It hasn't really happened that much before. When it comes to GDPR versus AI Act, one effect we could see was that the big tech giants, the big enterprises, they had no problem with it because they had the big legal resources to work with it and they had the infrastructure to support it. But what really was impeding was the smaller companies that didn't have that kind of talent and the fear of getting sued and the fear of all the things that we didn't see happening. And I'm really, really hoping that won't be the case with the AI Act. But it will be fun times and interesting times now in coming 6 months when AI Act will potentially be rolling out.
Well, what I feared actually happened, which is that we spoke about this for much longer than I anticipated. This is one of those topics that you can speak about quite at length and that everybody's super interested in. We won't have more time to talk about the legal stuff, but Anders is certainly an authority, and I think that that was a good way to end the panel discussion. So thank you, everybody, for your inputs, and I'm looking forward to the next 6 months and coming years. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.